throw food away rather than give it to the poor. Here, the greatest nation on the earth has nearly 13 million people homeless. Well, you think about that. The richest nation on the earth has millions in poverty and people going to bed hungry in the greatest nation on this earth. Insane asylums filled and the prisons busting with people. Now prison has become big businesses on the stock market, and they're investing in prisons because the plan is that the prey will be a lawful captive, starting with DCFS. Take your children, foster care, juvenile detention, then from there to prison, in and out, in and out, in and out, until your whole life becomes one of a new kind of slave. So it's called the prison industrial complex now. Then he says, they shall be drunk with their own blood as with sweet wine. And all flesh shall know that I, the Lord, am thy Savior and thy Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. Now it talks about the day of vengeance of our God. Now that's really some kind of language to use. The possessive pronoun. We know that Allah is the Lord of the world. But here is a prophecy of God fighting for a particular and peculiar people. Lord of the world's but a focus on a people that were no people at all. Y'all all right? Now listen to the words of Jesus. He says, I thank thee, Father in heaven, for keeping these things from the wise and the prudent men and revealing them unto babes. It's in 2 of the Gospels, but it has deep meaning. What do you mean, babes? God doesn't waste time revealing heavy wisdom to little babies. They can't handle it. So the baby is not a literal baby, but a baby here, or babe, is an innocent or inexperienced person. It's talking about a people without the experience of a free people. They're considered babes. They're considered children because they have not matured mentally to take responsibility for themselves and their children and their future and their destiny. They keep begging their former slave masters to educate them, to give them a job, to build a home for them, when we are capable of doing all of that for ourselves. Babes, children. Now listen. But he says, I thank thee for keeping these things. What things? Here are wise men, prudent men, and certain wisdom has been kept from them. Now, if you don't see yourself as a wise and prudent man, it hasn't been kept from you. But if you see yourself as a real wise person, and a real wise person is not in this audience, unless you are angelic and we don't know you. I don't mean to say that there's not wisdom in the audience. But the people that this is referring to are the rulers of the society in all spheres of human activity. There's wisdom that has been kept from them, and then it's revealed unto babes. Now, look, brothers, please bear with me a few more minutes. Look, what is revelation? When you say something is being revealed, that don't mean you can go to the library and get it out of the library. Because it's not there. I don't care how many books you have the command of. There is knowledge that is not in the library. We are living in a universe of plenty of knowledge. But when God chooses to reveal, it means He's disclosing or opening up truth that has not yet been known in the world. Well, if it has not yet been known in the world, then the people that run the world, rule the world, don't know this. So when God, listen to me, chooses an innocent, inexperienced, babe-like people to give them revelation, He is giving you the scepter of rulership over those that once ruled over you. Are you listening? So look, if you're the ruler and wisdom that you didn't know is now being revealed to an inexperienced people, that excites the rulers. Because in what they hear is the end of their power. Listen, listen. No man can rule you except he has greater knowledge than you. But when God puts a greater knowledge in you than is in your former ruler, then your ruler cannot rule you anymore. Excuse me for getting a little excited. Wait. You can't beat your enemy with a stick or a club. You may beat him up with your fist, but tomorrow he's back on top because he has a knowledge that is superior to your knowledge. And until you can possess a knowledge superior to his, then he will always be your master. And he will always keep you even from equal access to knowledge. Because if he wants to continue to rule you, and white people do not like following black people, they'll follow you in a sneaky kind of way. If you know what I mean. You know the high five? See, that's us. Every time you see white folks doing high five, see, they're following you. But they don't want to admit that. You see Eminem and the Beastie Boys and white folk rapping. You brought rap to the world. Now white folk rap. You say, wait a minute. They're following you, but they don't want to admit that. You're leading, but you're leading in fields that don't trouble the rulers. You lead in music, you lead in art, you lead in culture, you lead in sport, but that don't trouble the enemy. Because you're not bothering his ability to continue to rule you. But when you get up where God operates on the mental and spiritual plane. Oh, now you're getting somebody in trouble. So listen. When the babies start speaking things that the wise and the prudent men never heard, then they will be the opponents of revelation. They will be the opponent of the revelator. And they will be the opponent of the people who believe in that revelation. And as the Holy Quran teaches, they will not be happy until they bring you back to where you were. That will put you under them.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, we ask our listening audience to join us in prayer. Oh, surely I have turned myself to thee, trying to be upright. To him who originated the heavens and the earth, and I am not of the polytheists, surely my prayer and my sacrifice and my life, my death is all for Allah. No associate has he, this am I commanded, and I am of those who submit. O Allah, thou art the King, there is no God but thee, thou art my Lord, and I am thy servant. I have been greatly unjust to myself, and I confess my fault, so grant me protection against my fault, for none grants protection against fault but thee, and guide me to the best of morals, for none guides to the best of morals but thee, and turn from me the evil and the indecent morals, for none can turn from me the evil and the indecent morals but thou, O Allah. Make Muhammad successful, and make the true followers of Muhammad successful, as thou didst make Abraham and the true followers of Abraham successful, for surely thou art praised and magnified. And O Allah, bless Muhammad and bless the true followers of Muhammad, as thou didst bless Abraham and the true followers of Abraham, for surely thou art praised and magnified in our midst. Ameen. Thank you all for being patient with us for the prayer. In the name of Allah, who came to us in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, to whom praise is due forever, we thank him for his exalted servant. We say the Christ, the Mahdi now, and the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And to the two of them I stand before you, eternally indebted for their student, their servant, and their apostle, a Messiah to us today, in the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And I greet all of you that are listening to us today with the greeting words of peace. It is in the language and tongue of our fathers we say, Salam Alaikum. I am Student Minister Rodney Muhammad, here in the city of Philadelphia, a helper to the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. And in the Delaware Valley, we thank Almighty God for giving us such a great steward to provide for us in a spiritual way, in a moral way, in a courageous way, in a way that offers and affords us guidance that is unequaled in a troubling time. We thank Almighty God for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and I am grateful to him to be able to serve in such a very special way in this work as a student in the class under the scholarship of God. We are in, beloved, a very difficult period at this juncture in the history of the human family of the planet Earth. And regrettably, we should make you aware that our difficulties are not over. We have learned from the minister that Prophet Muhammad once said that all who have lost their life in a plague are actually martyrs. And our heart goes out to all that have suffered this kind of loss as this scourge on our planet has come upon the human family. We want to welcome our Facebook audience as we have reopened here at Mosque number 12 here at 2508 North Broad Street. And we hope you'll join us every Sunday here at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear the life-giving teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad from his servant Messiah to the world today, that preacher of freedom, justice, and equality, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We ask you today to support this ministry in this area. You can go to Mosque 12, that's mosque12.org, and there's a way that you can contribute, whether it's $10, whether it's $25, $100, as some give even $500. We're calling on your support today from the public to help us here in the city of Philadelphia as we service throughout the Delaware Valley to help the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's ministry. And some people say, well, what is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan doing? It's not just what he's doing, it's what he's done already. In an undisputable way, he has preached the Word of God. A word that when he preaches it, it absolutely transforms life. You can see millions in the country, and they are not all registered members of the Nation of Islam, that are benefiting from his preaching over the years, and he has been faithful to us despite every detractor that has come to try to disturb his work. Our subject today, as we started out talking about Independence Day and the 21st century slave. Of course, July the 4th was Independence Day for this country as they celebrate their own independence from their own countrymen, as they saw the need to break with the Crown of England and set up their own nation here in these United States of America. Of course, the entire time, the black man and woman have been here in America, but our status has not been that of freed citizens afforded every benefit of citizenship that is offered to those in the land. This critical time that we are in, we're at a juncture where we have to make a decision. The last time that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan spoke to an in-house audience of well over 10 to 15,000 people in Detroit, Michigan, his subject was the unraveling of a great nation. The unraveling of a nation doesn't suggest that they're being attacked by some outside power. The unraveling of a nation talks more about your own house coming apart. There's a scripture that says, you know, if Satan cast out Satan, how can his house stand? Well, we see America coming apart. And we can tell that from that time in February of 2020 in Detroit, Michigan, when the Honorable Louis Farrakhan discussed this with this failing nation. A lot has taken place, And we can see that the country now and its people are at a state of unrest and almost at a state of anarchy. Our subject today that we've taken up for this Sunday and inshallah next Sunday is self-determination. Self-determination, and one of the texts that I'd like to read from the Holy Quran in the 14th surah entitled Abraham. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And we sent no messenger but with the language of his people, so that he might explain to them clearly. Then Allah leaves in error whom he pleases, and he guides whom he pleases, and he is the mighty, the wise. We thank Allah for the reading of his word, a word we can't have unless he reveals it. And so we are thankful for that. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that the father of this world was born with a determined idea. An idea, from what we understand, is a fully developed thought. And the father of this world was born with that idea, which means that he's not the originator of the idea, but he's born as a vessel to carry an idea that was already in existence at the time of his birth. The idea for the present world is the domination and the rule of this world and all its subjects. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that the present rulers of the world today, known as the Caucasian people, their rule has come about because the original residents of our planet have been asleep. We've been asleep to the knowledge of who we are. We've been asleep to the wisdom that comes from us. We've been asleep to our real power. We've been asleep to our unity with each other. And as a result of our not being awake, we were made a slave. And a slave, is one who now is made to carry out the agenda of his captor. The slave is made to carry out the will of the one that dominates and rules over him. Last week, we talked about the father of this world being both a social and genetic engineer. To make one who was not born a slave, to make one who was born in a more independent existence, you have to take that human being through a series of steps that are completely unnatural for that human being. After you do that over a period of time and you regulate, and begin to modify the behavior of that human being in a way that you dehumanize him, dehumanize her, and cause them to begin to act in a way that's not in accord with the nature that they were created in, then chemically, the ones that they produce from their own act of reproduction will come out already chemically disposed to the social regimentation that the parents had undergone. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad reminds us that the control over us rests under our names, the control over us rests under our religion, and of course, economically, we don't exercise a power that demonstrates our ability to care even for ourselves. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, as I put his picture up before us, we were called Negroes. Where did this name come from? Because there are no other black people on the planet Earth, 196,940,000 square miles of Earth, and there are no other black people that carry this name or any real trace of this name. When we go back and study this term Negro, we see it coming from a Greek expression from when the Greeks began to see our fathers in our ancient civilizations and set up, and they saw us building tombs for those that had lived among us, particularly great ones, and these tombs were to carry them on further into another life. Sometimes in the tombs you found provisions for them because there was an expectation that the life continued and that it did not end at the burial. When the Greeks began to see this preoccupation with those who had died and passed on, well, that word necro or necroscopy, this word deals with death. Well, when you interchange the consonant C with the consonant G in that, necro becomes Negro. Negro is not a term to deal with the color of your skin. It's not a term to deal with the color of my skin. It's a term to deal with the state of my mind. A mind, mind you, that's the product of a work that has taken place in these United States of America, which is the home and the factory where Negro is created. Out of Negro flows names. And these names do not reflect us anymore. These names reflect those who have captured us and then socially or through a socialization process made us more pliable to their will. These folk made us to bear their names and not the names that they found us in. Then religion had to come. And religion is designed to be set up so that the person that has you can control what you believe. Religion is generally an institution that helps us to relate to the creator of the heavens and the earth, to relate to your God. And generally people turn to a God because that God is a God that can lift them, that can protect them, that can guide them. But nevertheless, they were in control of the religion. And once you control a man's name and his religion, you pretty much can control his economic state. But as a slave, you were the property. You weren't even allowed to own property. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to us, we are not Negroes because God, whose proper name is Allah, has taught me who we are. We are not colored people because God has taught me who the colored people are. The American Negro, he says, is without a knowledge of self. We should ask ourselves about knowledge and how everyone in America is receiving knowledge, and it looks pretty much like we're receiving the same knowledge, but everyone else is advancing, and we don't see ourselves advancing. And so we should ask ourselves, well, why are we entertaining a knowledge that seems to limit us, but it does not seem to be limiting those that are with us? Why is it that black people are fighting for change, but too many of us don't want to change? How can we force real social change for the benefit of black people in these United States of America unless black people change? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad shared with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan one day a secret in language and speaking language well. And he talked about speaking language well had more to do with subject-verb agreement than it does necessarily with speaking one tongue as opposed to another one. What do you mean, Mr. Muhammad, when there's an impediment in the tongue and we're not speaking with subject-verb agreement? That means in present time, our picket signs, in present time, over our bullhorns and our microphones, we are demanding freedom. We are demanding justice, and we are demanding equality. But then our actions are not in harmony with the demand, for we call for freedom, but our actions are in the past and we're still conducting ourselves as slaves. Free people. Namely, one of the chief characteristics of free people is that they take responsibility for themselves. Free people are not looking for someone else necessarily to feed them. Free people begin to look for ways to feed themselves. Free people are people who are not looking for someone else to house them, because free people are growing to find a means to house themselves. Free people are not looking for someone else to educate their children. Free people are teaching their own children, and their children sit at their feet and learn about their parents and learn about their forefathers, learn about their people, and learn about their history. If that's not taking place, then our actions are still like a slave, like someone telling us, you don't teach your young, I teach them. Don't you worry about eating, I'll feed you. Don't you worry about how you're going to clothe yourself, I'll clothe you. Don't worry about where you're going to live. I'll give you your housing. Well, that, beloved, is not subject-verb agreement. And so we are not speaking the language well, according to how Allah sees it, and it is expressed through his servant, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. I am so thankful that the knowledge that we have of the present world takes us back to its origin, because the father of the present world wanted to make sure that we were blinded to truth, which we are taught is at the root of the universe. The Holy Quran teaches us that Allah created this universe with truth. And if truth is the root and the all in all, through and through of this entire universe that we are taught is 76 quintillion miles in diameter, then that's 76 quintillion miles in diameter of truth running in and out of the universe. And the only way to really be successful in a universe created with truth is to learn the truth and then live by the truth. If God created everything with truth, and you and I bear witness that God created us, then did he not create us with truth? And if God did create us with truth, then the cells of my brain, listen to me, beloved, the cells of my brain, I mean, the brain is a factory. The brain is a clinic. If you cut yourself and you feel the sharp pain that comes from the cut, well, the injured area notifies the brain. And notice how the brain goes to work producing chemicals that are sent to the injured area in almost minutes. The impact that you first felt begins to subside a little. And as it subsides a little, then it begins to send things that will bring a healing to that area of the body. That means that the brain is already designed to bring about repair where there's injury. And this is done, beloved, without us even thinking consciously about making that kind of thing happen. So you can see something in the creation of the universe and the creation of ourselves with truth. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad once said that just as the planets are made at right angles, look at what he's saying, so Allah made the cells of the brain of man to think right. If the cells are already made to think right, and you're already created with truth, it seems to me that Almighty God is guaranteeing your and my success in a universe of truth, because he designed us to work harmoniously with it so that it will work harmoniously with us and bring us what we need. Why, it was just shared with us. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan reminded us during Ramadan. Look at the child, and the child is developing in the womb of its mother. And then the child is born. And when the child gets here, the child can go right to the breast of its mother and begin to suckle for milk, which is a complete food. It didn't have to go and make a request. He didn't have to wait on it. It was already present when the child got here. This is a sign to us that as Allah created us in the womb, brings us into existence, you may think we have nothing, but everything that we already need has been provided for us by the living God. And all we're talking about is not him giving us something. He's already done that. We're talking about accessing what he's already given. So I say all praise is due to Allah for that. But if we don't have a knowledge that's teaching us that way, then we're limited in our knowledge, and it makes us go back to the man that's limiting us in knowledge. And what happens is they have determined how they're going to make us to see ourselves. And if we're going to see ourselves in a better light than our captors have placed us, then we're going to have to become what we call self-determined. We thank Almighty God. To be self-determined, we need to relate to God. And so the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that the most important thing that we can study and get the knowledge of is the knowledge of God. We're thankful to Almighty God, even as people contend with us over our claim that Almighty God have come to these United States of America. Look at the chart, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says one of the attributes of Allah, these attributes represent his qualities and characteristics and things. And notice that the attributes of Allah are also found in ourselves. And the difference between the attributes in Allah and the attributes in ourselves is only the development and the degree to which they are developed and exercised. You can't call yourself Alim. You have no right to call yourself that except you are related to this God. You have no right to call yourself Rahim and these other names that are attributes of the God except you have a relationship with him. The only people you see who don't want to wear those names are people that don't want to relate to that God. And any of us that don't want those names and don't want to relate to him, it's only because the people that don't want to relate to that God have trained you not to want to relate to him. But you can go in any house of worship, any religious denomination throughout these United States of America, and you may see us wearing names that don't even relate to the attributes of the living God. But when you go and look at the names of the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren, you can see that our children are beginning to break tradition. And they're no longer wearing the names of the people that brought us over in slave ships. They're no longer wearing the names of the people who burned crosses on our lawns and lynched us for at least 100 years during the Jim Crow period and during what we call segregated living. You see now, you can go into church and Bilal is helping out with the choir or the usher board. You can go now and see people wearing names, and the strain of the name can be traced back to one of these 99 attributes of the living God. All praise is due to Allah. Even as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, man, all you got to do is stop complaining about the dirty glass. Just put the clean glass up next to it, and the people will make the right choice. Well, obviously, these names, like a clean glass of water, their parents are looking at the glasses and saying, well, I don't want to wear Sally and Susie anymore. I don't want to wear Donna and Kathy anymore. I'm going to push that glass to the side. I'm going to take Aisha. I'm going to take Jamal. I'm going to take Raheem. I'm going to take some other name. And so we see a generation and one following it in Black America already breaking with the names. For the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, to come out of slavery, you have to come out of the name that makes you a slave. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, one of the attributes of Allah, the all-wise God, is knowledge. That's an attribute of Allah. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us that the attributes of Allah are actually forces. And as these are forces in the divine being, knowledge, alim in Arabic, is a force. Think of when you came into the knowledge of something. What did it do to you in your head? It forced you to come out of what you were assuming. It forced you to come away from what may have been other than what knowledge has brought to you. Ignorance, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan reminds us, if you look in physics and you look at darkness, we're in a dark room and somebody hits the switch and the lights come on. And what happens to the darkness that's in the room? Once the light is on, the darkness is dispelled. The darkness can't stay there and compete with the light. Well, like darkness, so it is with ignorance. Ignorance is our greatest enemy. Ignorance is the greatest barrier and impediment to human success. And if black people are going to be successful, it's not going to come from a bill from Washington, D.C. It's not going to come from the State House or City Council. The only way that you and I are going to come out of what we are in, the only way we can start walking in self-determination, we got to have knowledge. And knowledge is like light, and when light comes on in the mind of the human being, the darkness of ignorance is dispelled. Ignorance can't compete with knowledge. And the quality of the knowledge determines the strength of the building of your mind. The quality of the knowledge will determine the course of actions that people begin to take. Look what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says. Knowledge is the result of learning. Well, in my ignorant state, I just thought God is God. God knows everything. But even though he knows everything, he works in mysterious ways. Why would he want to work mysteriously? If he knows everything, look like he'd want to share it with me. He can see me down here stumbling. He can see me making a mess of myself. He can see me being unjust to myself, yet He is the author of the great principle of justice. He can see that we are not able to take advantage of the equality of opportunity. So what's he waiting on? Why isn't he sharing with us what we need to come into freedom, to come into justice, and come into equality? Maybe he has, and we haven't accessed it. But God had to learn, so we're taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. God learns, God studies. God wasn't just here, God brought himself into existence. That's why he's got the right. And if God brought himself into existence and it was nothing but him, and then he created what you live in, then everything that we are in has its authorship and root back in God. So I can learn, you can learn. And whatever field you learn, you may become an expert in it. And maybe the field that I'm in, I can become an expert in it. But no matter what you know, and no matter what I know, God knows best. Because every discipline of knowledge goes back and finds its root in him. So he calls himself not only knowledgeable, but the best knower. He knows better than any of us. And so no matter what I know, I still take what I know to the best knower, and the best knower can show me what to do with what I know. Look like we need to be turning to somebody, because we got black folks with PhDs and masters. We got black folks with bachelors. We got black folks with every kind of degree you can name. Black people know how to do everything from pushing a broom to putting a satellite out in space. But we can't move ourselves out of bad neighborhoods. We can't seem to get our children to go to school and come out of school and want to take their education and build something for themselves. So you tell me, why is it that the knowledge that black people have, why is it limiting us? And we find other people being able to just get to these United States of America, and their social group is moving on to better themselves and the way that they live. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, knowledge is the result of learning and is a force or energy that makes its bearer accomplish or overcome obstacles, barriers, and resistance. What does that say to you right there? That says to me, if there's an obstacle in my path, there's something I can learn to circumvent that obstacle. If there's a barrier, I can learn something that can take me beyond that barrier. Just because you don't know it don't mean it don't exist. Just because I'm unaware of it doesn't mean that it's not in existence. I just don't know it. You just don't know it. We as black people, we don't know it and won't know it unless the best knower comes to us. In fact, God means possessor of power and force, so the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says. So, the Nation of Islam, our point number 12, we make the bold claim. The bold claim that Allah has come, and that he has come to these United States of America making himself known, because we did not have the real knowledge of him, and we never could have come up on the real knowledge of him. He would have to bring us into that knowledge. You know, we talk like, well, we chose God, he ought to do this, that, and the other. We didn't choose God. We were too ignorant to do that. God chose us. It's not for us to give God an assignment. God is here to give us an assignment. Possessor of power and force, doesn't it? We believe that Allah has 99 attributes. So we believe there are 99 forces in that, and that God himself, the possessor of all these attributes, That's the 100 attribute. They say, well, ain't your God Allah? I serve the living God. We talking about the same God. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad started off saying God, but his proper name is Allah. Why does he do that? Because we take God and use it for everything. We cuss putting God's name in it. Somebody will just look up and see something and say, oh my God. But it has nothing to do with worship. It has nothing to do with bringing yourself into a divine order. You just see something that amazed you, shocked you, made you joyful, maybe even startled you. And we use God to cuss and everything. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, God, the supreme being, the one responsible for our existence and the existence of all, his name shouldn't be tossed around like that. And this wild civilization that we live in, by us doing that, you can tell how we treat things that are created by God and come from him. So no, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, then his proper name is Allah. Because Allah starts with the prefix all. See, God is one, but he's been called over centuries by many names. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us these are good names that he's been called by. So when we say Allah, we're saying all those names at once. And they're wrapped up in the name of Allah. No, Allah is not some different God over here. Say, well, y'all believe that man is God. Oh, yes, we believe man is God. And that these 99 attributes that are in me, the 99 attributes that are in you, we're so far, we're light years from developing them. Because we have been born in sin and shaped in iniquity. But this one was born outside of this environment. This one was raised up outside of this environment. This one did not suffer the education that you and I suffer. The kind of education that leaves you dumb as hell even after you've been to school. Leaves you dumb as hell even after you got a degree. And I don't mean to put people down that apply themselves to a discipline, but you ask me, how do we have all of this and still have nothing? No, family, this one has developed all 99 attributes to the most excellent degree in his own person. When you do that, that's God. When you do that, that's a real possessor of power and force. Knowledge is power, but knowledge is potential power. You can have something that's potential, but if you don't have the trigger to set it off to make it work, then it's just sitting there. And it's power, but it's still leaving you and me powerless. No. You got to have wisdom to unlock the potential that's in your knowledge. And wisdom, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, it is the wisdom that makes you produce the power. But there's no such thing as having power without the wisdom to produce it. Electricity is power. And they had to get a knowledge that it was there, but just knowing it's there doesn't make them learn how to harness it and make it travel through a wire so you can produce a light in your own home. You can make a refrigerator come on or a fan come on and off, and the various things that we use electrical power for. They had to become wiser in their knowledge of this prevailing force that is mysterious, because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that electricity was the mysterious force that was in the darkness in the beginning. Let's move on, because we're talking about the power to define ourselves now. Do you realize that the average human being would have to struggle to just get up and feel positive about yourself for at least 8 or 9 hours while you're up? There's so much negativity in this world to make you feel down about yourself and to make you see yourself in a dim light, that motivational speakers make millions of dollars going around just to talk, to get you to feel better about yourself. They make millions from books that they sell in the category of self-improvement, because the average human being now is without the kind of spirit necessary to be positively charged mentally to feel good about themselves. Last week we talked about how the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talked about how this land was set up. This land was set up with an attitude. And the attitude that this land was set up with is that white is supreme. Not the white mind, no, white skin. You know, there's an argument today, some whites are saying, why are you saying, I have white privilege? I've worked a job. I know what it's like to mop a floor. I've worked after school, and I went to school and I learned and I got my bachelor's and then I got my master's degree and everything. And then when I applied for a job, well, maybe one wouldn't hire me because I didn't have enough experience, but eventually someone took me. And so I worked hard and I've been turned down before. Yeah, but you were turned down on merit. I can mop a floor after school all day, and I can work late after school throughout the week. I can get my bachelor's, I can get my master's, I can qualify for the job. But even though I qualify and I merit the position, they'll deny me just because of the color of my skin. But you can still get through because your color of skin ain't like mine. That's white privilege. White privilege is not saying that white people haven't worked hard. White privilege is saying that even when we work hard, we're denied because of the color of our skin. So the attitude in this nation was that white is supreme. Then this thing was injected into the cultural framework of this country. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan describes it really as a belief system. And the belief system carries with it the educational institution. And the educational institution, what it does, it perpetuates the idea that was in that attitude. That's what it does. And you saw in the movie Malcolm X, he said, I want to be a lawyer. Now, Malcolm, you don't mean that. You don't want to try to be a lawyer. He said, my people will not even come to you if you're a lawyer. Some of your own people may not even come to you if you're a lawyer. A carpenter, that's what you ought to be. And if you're a carpenter, I'll hire you. I'll get you to do something. So say after me, nothing succeeds like success. My God. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said he experienced the same thing. This is the educational institutions designed that even if you're coming through and you start aspiring to something greater than what they got framed for you, the teacher gently brings you back in line so that you subscribe yourself to the limitations that institution was missioned to keep you in, but was designed to take their own white children further. Once you got a belief system like that and people being educated, somebody gonna question it. Is this right? So now you need a religious system that sanitizes it, because it's a funky idea to start with. And so you got to sanitize it with religion. You got to show in religion. So they begin to find biblical passages and things that could support this reckless idea. And you know, family, to dehumanize a person, you got to be really less than human in your own thinking. And we never really thought about that. Civilized, sophisticated people don't dehumanize you. They look civilized, but they're less than human in their mind, spirit, and in their heart. So now you got religion. Now you got education. Now you got people that just feel that the idea is right and everybody knows it. And since everybody knows it, everybody ought to just act according. In Chicago, Carl Hansberry, I think I got his name right, he wanted to move in Washington Park in Chicago. Well, in Chicago, the real estate was always set up in the early years of Chicago with these covenants. And the covenant was, okay, you white, you own this property, you can buy this property, but you got to sign this covenant that you'll never sell to a black person. And Carl Hansberry, he wanted to go into the Washington Park area at that time, and he was being denied. So he had to fight that. And Earl Dickerson, who I was blessed to meet before his death, a civil rights attorney in Chicago when I was growing up, a friend of mine that I grew up with had met him, and we used to sit with him many times to talk. But Earl Dickerson won that case all the way at the United States Supreme Court, so he could get that. Well, you know, his daughter Lorraine was a playwright, so she ends up writing Raisin in the Sun. And Raisin in the Sun is about a black family that's moving into a white neighborhood with Sidney Poitier and others. But you could see that now you go back and you see that this story, Raisin in the Sun, had some elements in what her father had to fight in Chicago to come to the Washington Park area. The thing was the color of your skin. That made you want to come here and be the garbage man? I'll build a cottage for you in the back if you the gardener. You can live in the house if you the maid or the butler. But if you moving next door to me owning like I am, what that's going to do is mess up my idea that white is supreme. I can't prove white is supreme if you living just like I am, if you earning just as much money as I'm earning, if you doing the kind of work that I can do, it does not allow me, it does not support me in my claim of superiority if I don't see you acting in an inferior way. So now the Constitution got to come in. They're working to frame and codify laws that they're going to live by. And what do? They put us in the second article of the Constitution as 3/5 of a man. And that determines, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us how they see us, and generally how you see a person is how you deal with him. There's so many analogies that I could give. But we've got to see that the first thing that we got to do to come out of the state that we are in is we got to take a certain kind of power, and it's not the power to overthrow this institution or that. We got to overthrow what's been done to our mind. We need what's called appraisal power. You got a house, and you say, well, I won't sell it. I think this house, I ought to be able to get $400,000 for this house. They send the appraiser out, and the appraiser looks over everything, and then he writes his thing up, and then they come back to you with what your house appraised for. So you may be trying to sell it for $400,000, and a potential buyer might say $400,000. Well, what did it appraise for? Well, it only appraised for $290,000. Well, why should I pay you $400,000? And the appraiser said, see, the person that's got the power to determine the value of your home is the one who came to appraise it. It's been too many people appraising the value and worth of black people, but it's time for black people to come up with their own appraisal of how we see ourselves and determine for ourselves what our value and worth is. And you will never do that with someone else determining for you. You will have to be self-determined in order for that to take place. Aristotle, who is one of the minds in the forming of the Western world, Aristotle had a method called formal logic. Formal logic, as you can see on the slide, is the means by which we came to know anything. That means that he would use premises, and from the premises, it would lead him to the conclusion. Look at how they took formal logic so that they could make racist thought make sense. Number one, it was a major premise. And the major premise they used in America, all men are made in the image of God. Then, number two, they come up with the minor premise. God, as everybody knows, is not a Negro. Now remember, all men are made in the image of God. But God ain't a Negro. So when you see a Negro, he's not in the image of God. So what's the conclusion? Therefore, the Negro is not a man. It was easy to put us in there. And they only put us in there as 3/5 of a human being so that the South could count and get more electoral college votes. And the reason that they didn't count us as a full human being, because we were their property. And guess what? The Southern plantation owners didn't want to pay property tax. Man, I'm telling you, when we get down to the truth of what's going on in this land, we'll wonder, how did we go along with this as far as we did? We're almost finished with this portion, family. I want to deal more with our identity, because if we can't define who we are, it's hard for us to take the next step as a social group and really begin to repair ourselves in the areas that we need repairing. We need repair spiritually. Our morals have been destroyed, but you're not going to live another way till you see yourself another way. The strength of our minds is moral. It's not just intelligent. Intelligent people rule over us. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us, when you're intelligent and you lack character, when you're intelligent but you're still immoral, you're really a devil in human form. So the last identity that we started going by is African American. And I'm gonna conclude on that point. African American. It's a name that doesn't really describe us. You say, well, wait a minute, Brother Muhammad. We're from Africa. We're in America. That makes us African American. Yeah, but how are you in America? See, you and I are in America in a way where we were grafted and taken away from any kind of way we were, any language that we had, any religion that we had, any cultural expressions that we had. All of our ways of communication were cut off. You only need study the history of the drum and how they begin to see our communication through such that they begin to cut off everything that made being a slave holder, a slave trader, a slave master, anything that made those tasks difficult, They had to make sure that we were cut off from anything of being African as we were when we first came. That's why people come from Africa and have been coming for years. And you still don't have a real connection with them. Wearing a dashiki don't connect you with African people. Putting up African statues and pictures around your house, it's symbolic. But you and I have no program to save the African from neo-colonialistic approaches. The African is looking for help. No, family, anything about us that was African was destroyed. And we have been made over. They never called you an African. They called you a Negro. They called you a coon. They called you colored people. But they never called you an African. Now you're saying you're African American. Well, you know, in 1990, University of Maryland, I believe it was, they had programs for students. And in these students were receiving benefits, but black in America were being left shortchanged. So they fought to get some language in there that would be more specific so that it would help black folks in America be able to get into the halls of this institution. So a Pakistani came to America and he applied for this, and they said, that's for African Americans. And he said, well, you know, I'm Pakistani, but I lived in Africa before I came here. And now I'm here and attained American citizenship. So the fact that I lived in Africa and the fact that I got American citizenship now, it makes me African American. And you know what happened? Supreme Court ruled in his favor, and he was given $150,000 to help him in the schooling. And some black person in America was unable to get that because, family, we didn't have the right terminology, which is really more correct is blacks in America, but a black American would have done that. So I'm going to take leave and give us some things to think about. Why have other ethnic groups, you know, been able to come in and move with their social group and their social order and everything right past us, and we've been here longer than everyone? These are questions we got to grapple with now, and why we're frozen at the bottom of the socio-economic rung and ladder in this country. I thank the Honorable Louis Farrakhan for the kind of leadership that he has shown. And one of the clearest ways he teaches us to get rid of racism is through black accomplishment and black excellence. That doesn't mean that white people are going to love you if you begin to excel, but what it does mean is they're going to respect you. Haven't you noticed that they call us the N-word back so many generations? And they go back maybe 400 years, 500 years. But when you get into the 2,500 years ago and that, notice that even members of the Klan, and J.B. Stoner is through letters disputing with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And you can see some of this communication in Message to the Black Man. You don't see him when he refers to our people thousands of years ago. He don't use the N-word when he's referring to us. Why? You can't look at pyramids. You can't look at great universities. You can't look at learning. You can't look at white folks coming out of Greece and all that, sitting at the feet of our fathers, learning wisdom, learning civilization that they could take back and begin to set up their schools of thought and call that person the N-word. You look silly calling that person that. So even the Ku Klux Klanmen didn't call us that after you go back so far, because what you left on the earth demonstrates the excellency of the people in those civilizations. If they look down on those people, then why are they over there digging up the earth trying to find artifacts and find the hidden cities that we have placed under the sand and that? No, because they don't see that. They call you that and they call me that because they made us right here in their own factory. The same way the German doctor Frankenstein made a monster. The monster didn't have a name. The monster was named after the one that made him. That's why he's called Frankenstein. He ain't called Frankenstein because he's fierce and ugly and dangerous. He's called Frankenstein because the one that made him called him that. You and I have been called names because the one that made us called us that. But God is making us now. And we're looking at a man that God has made. And he's free of every malady. He's free of every tool in the factory to break a black man down and make him something less than what God intended him to be. We got evidence that God has come and he's interested in the black man and woman here in these United States of America. And that evidence is in one man, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I thank you for being with us this Sunday. And I greet you in peace and ask that you join us next week at 11 a.m. Assalamu alaikum.